In this sort of second half of the application, we'll be creating a view controller that's going to contain and handle the form for creating a new item. So we will create a new view controller and we'll program said view controller to accept the inputs, verify that the quantity is an integer, and prevent the user from continuing if the fields aren't filled in. So we don't want empty cells in our view, so we're going to have this view controller prevent that. And first we'll start off by creating the view controller through the GUI. So you just drag a view controller, standard one. We'll program a Swift file. We'll write a Swift file later, but first let's make the interface. So it's going to contain a few things like a title, stuff like a title. So let's add new item. We'll tweak the interface later, or feel free to tweak it as you please. I'm just going to leave it plain for the sake of the demonstration. So we have an item name. We're going to have, oops, I'm holding, this mouse is wonky. So we have item label, or item quantity, not item quantity. Just try to line it up. Like so. And then we'll have one more. It's going to be for the description. So just item description. So for these, we're going to have a few inputs. For item name, item quantity, we're going to have text field inputs. And notice here it's text field inputs, right? So this accepts anything that's typed. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to program the view controller to prevent the user from inputting characters like ABC all the way to Z or any other alphabetical characters inside the quantity field. We'll do that both here and in the Swift file, which we'll be creating once we're done with this. But before I do that, let me just add the item description field. So what this is going to be, it's going to be a text, where is it? Hold on. It's down here somewhere, text view. So it displays multiple lines of editable text. So you're going to put that in here. So it's going to look something like this. We'll leave it, let's adjust the size so it's aligned nicely, a little bigger like so, and so we'll write item description will go here. And also, last but not least, we need a button. So it's gonna go somewhere here. I'm gonna say done. Let's make it bigger just to fill the space. 24. Align that. Let's make it, align it with this title. Okay, so before we start programming, one last thing we got to do is in the item quantity text input, we can tweak a little bit. We can tweak the parameters a little bit. So let's go to, hold on a sec. So in the text input traits, you can define here. So here we're going to define, we could define stuff like nickname and everything. We're going to leave this because it's not like an address. It's not an address or anything, or a credit card number or something. You leave that. But what we do need is the keyboard type. And it's going to be number pad. So from the user's point of view, they can only use the number pad. We also have to do for safe measure to program it in our Swift file. But we also need this here as well. We don't need spell checking. We don't need smart quotes. We don't need smart inserts or smart dashes. This is numbers. We don't need corrections for the number. And I think that's pretty much it. Return key default. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Capitalization, none. Specified content type, no, it's just plain numbers, nothing specific. All right, so that's it programmatically. what you could do for extra features, that you could have clear button when editing begins. So like if you want to clear it, you can clear it when you're typing. So you might want to add that here as well. So in the parameters, you can add clear when editing begins. Just add a little extra feature. It's pretty cool. You can also do this programmatically, but it's easier this way. Okay, so we have our basic interface. One last thing I wanted to do here is add the segue. So before doing this and learning this, I knew a little bit about segues, but here segues, I thought here we have only one segue possible. So usually you only have one segue to one screen, right? But what if you have a situation like this situation where you have this segue from the table view to go to the details, but you also want one to go to here. So let me explain a little further what I mean. So while learning this, I wanted to find where exactly what is the source of the plus button? How are the details? How do you segue to it? Because this doesn't help much. Like, how is this split to here, and this goes into here, and so on? Well, long story short, I figured out that the segues to go to the details screen it comes from the prototype cell, the prototype cell. So this segue right here, you click it, you see that comes from the prototype cell. So we'd have to find a way to add another segue to go to the detail view, to the add items view, because it seems the table cell itself controls the segue, even though the button's in the navigational bar. I'm not sure exactly why it is like this or how it was programmed, because this is a default template, but I know I want to add another segue so that when you tap on the plus, you go to the new page rather than the new view controller page, rather than just auto-generating an item. We're going to do a couple things for that, but first I want to make the segue. So if I try to make a segue, now I will erase this one right here. See, this one went away. So every time, if I build the app and run it, every time I press the cell, it'll go automatically to the new item screen, which is what I don't want. So what I'm going to do, you're going to do the same thing. So you're going to select the cell. You're going to hold control and drag, click and hold and drag with your mouse to your new view controller. And you have down here accessory action. This kind of allows us to have another accessory segue along with the detail. And apparently this works for the plus. So we'll see that in a bit, because it'll work because we'll have an identifier called show add item. Let's call it show add item. We're going to go over to our master view controller, and we're going to program the plus button to, instead of adding a new item, an auto-generated new item that is, we are going to perform a segue with that identifier. So essentially, we're just going to take this insert new object, and instead of all this code right here, we are going to do this. So just comment this, and then you're going to have perform segue with the identifier show add item, and you could just have the sender be any. Just leave it at like that. And let me just build it and see. It might be self. I think it's self. Yeah, it's self here. It's the self, just the cell for whatever the interface is being. The cell is going to segue us into the add item screen. So if you built the app now, I'm not going to build it now and run it because for time reasons. I'm gonna leave it like that for now. But if you build it, and now if you tap the plus button, instead of generating a new element with the auto-generated text, you're going to be led to this screen. But if you tap on the cell, you'll still be directed to the detail screen, which is what we want. So now we can move on to programming this view controller. Let's create a file. So new file. It's going to be a Swift file like before. And we're going to call it add item view controller. And first off, we gotta also import UIKit. Import UIKit. We're gonna declare a class. It's going to be called exactly like the file name, add item view controller. And it's going to inherit the class UI view controller because it's a view controller. Right? Okay, so we have a couple things we have to do in this view controller. I'm just going to copy paste these default implementations. So you have view did load and view did receive memory warning because these are default. Something like we want to have dispose of resources that can be recreated, and we're going to need view did load later. So I'm just going to copy that just to show you other ways of doing it. You can just type it in, but I like to do it this way. So item. So let's see, paste, and we have view did load, and you're going to do super view did load, so it's going to override it. We're going to need this one later. This one's just for disposing resources, like it says. Okay, so now we're going to connect the UI elements to this view controller. So let's save it. And we're going to open the storyboard, and we're going to change the view controller. So you can go up here in this little bar, it says view controller, and you can change it. Go to this third button right here, I think it's with the class descriptor. So you have like file name, type, quick help, and you have the custom class tab. You can add stuff for your class. So we're going to do add item view controller, save it. And I want to go side by side view to see if I can add it. So let's see, I might have to do it manually. So let's see if I can do it. Yeah, I might have to switch manually. So manual item, so item manager, detail, add item controller. Okay. And then we're going to drag our text inputs into the area right here. Text fields to item new item name input, or we could just without new, so it's not too verbose. And it's not working again, so you could just do outlets, so manually IB outlet weak var item name input UI text field, like that. You're going to connect this to the element, so it's connected. And then you're going to have another IB outlet weak var item quantity. I'll just do quant input just because it's not too verbose. UI text fields, exclamation point like before. And then we have IB outlet. So we need to add IB outlet weak var item desk DECSC input UI text view, I think it's called. Let me just double check that. It is a UI text view, and it needs to be an exclamation point. And you drag that to there, and you drag this reference to here, like so. So now there are UIs connected to here. And also, we're gonna have two things going on. For this button, we're gonna have outlet. We're gonna need to reference it because we're gonna need to be able to disable it. So it's called done button. don't think it's going to work. Yeah. So let me add it. Let me build. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Let me build it. Maybe that'll help. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's weird. Done. Button. Yeah, I'll just do it myself. So you have at IB, outlet, week, var, done, button, UI, button. And that's going to be referenced. Oops, don't want that. My mouse is weird. Put that there. All right, so our references are all good. So you just select that. Oh, it's already did it twice. Huh. I'll have to remove this. I already did it twice. I don't want to have two. Oh, no. Oops. Okay. Okay. I'll fix that because there's two references. Let me just fix that. So if you have two references, you can remove them, or maybe that's just a glitch. I'll leave that for now. If it doesn't build, I'll fix it. So, okay. So next, we're going to have to program the view controller to handle our inputs. So when we click the button here, we're going to have to process it so the shared storage has a new item added to it. So we're going to have a function at object, because it's going to be an object, part of an object, so we have a function. We're going to have add item, and we don't need parameters. It's going to be a void type, void function body. Should be a lowercase t. Add item. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to have a new item created. So let new item equal item. Nope. The item itself, not the. No, that's not right. We need that. Okay, so we have item name and everything. So what we do here, we unwrap the inputs. You can choose to store them to variables themselves. I guess we could do that to make it a lot easier. So I let new item name equal item name input dot text unwrapped. Let new item quant equal item quant input dot text. Let new item desk equal item desk input dot text. And then you fill them in the arguments. So item name is going to be new item name. New item quantity is going to be new item quant. And then we're going to have new item desk. Save, so the item is added. Let's see what's complaining about here. Oh, because they're not used. Item quant input, new item quant. Okay, so the interpreter's a little slow. So, okay, so this problem we'll get back to in a sec. I just want to show you how to use storage.shared.objects. We're going to append to the array, the shared array in this entire application. So the new item is going to be new item. New item. So, and then we're going to have to perform a segue. So perform segue. And you have the identifier. It says back to table, we'll call it. We'll add a segue in a bit. The sender is going to be self. So let me add a segue to the main screen. So that screen is going to be, let me just do this here, zoom out, and it's going to go back to the table screen. Not this one or any of these, back to the one where the table view is. Like that, you can show detail, and I'm going to add the identifier back to table, just for safe measure. Okay, and now I'm going to connect this button with this action. One sec. So it has to be IB action, like so. And you can connect it now with the button. And that's what we want. So if you look at that, the down button. Okay, so one last thing before making this thing functional without the verification of the text inputs and preventing the user from inputting characters quantity, we have to fix this a little. So basically, we could have everything input as a string, right? So what we're going to do is inside item, the item class, we can just simply have this input as a string, right? Fix this to item quantity, and the user will input a number themselves, which will be an ASCII character in a string form. It'll be in the string form. So we won't have to worry about forcing an integer here, because it'll cause problems for inputting new item from the interface, because then here you would have to find somehow to process the text input as an integer, which we don't want. Instead, we're going to have the text input isolated to integers from 0 to 9, like combinations of those integers. So if I build now, I think I'm going to get problems in the master view controller because of the change here to this class, but we're going to change that in a little bit. All right, so let's get back to our storyboard. Let me just see something. So let me just check on the master. So now this down here with the auto-generated stuff won't work. So I'm going to, oh no, I disabled it. Never mind. It doesn't work but it wouldn't work anyway. So let me see what it says here. It's complaining because it's a little slow. Okay, but that'll fix itself. So the next things we got to do are we got to make sure that the quantity input is only an integer, and we also got to make sure that the done button, so let me go back to that. So we got to make sure this done button is only clickable when we have certain fields filled out, because we don't want empty cells in the table. So let's move on to that.